This is going to be a different type of video than normal, but I hope you'll indulge me because I think it's really important. This video is for those of you that have no idea what's been going on within the recent controversy centered around D&D. In my mind, it's actually the biggest and most important controversy in this game's history, almost 50 years worth of history. If you follow other channels that focus on the industry, you're probably in the loop already about this, but this video is probably not for you. This video is for people who are new to D&D or are casual gamers who haven't really been into game design before, or for those of you who have heard a little bit about what's going on, but you don't really know what the big deal is. But it's also for the general public that may just want to go buy a ticket to the next D&D movie and may want to know a little bit more about the company they're supporting. So, what's this all about? The company that owns D&D, Wizards of the Coast, who are owned by the even bigger company Hasbro, most of you know who they are, may be about to hurt a large number of independent creators and small businesses, regular people trying to support their families. The whole issue is centered around something called the Open Gaming License, or OGL. So bear with me as I explain what it is and why it's important first. The Dungeons & Dragons Open Gaming License is a set of guidelines. It allows us to use very specific intellectual property from the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game in our own creations. Now, Wizards of the Coast created this license over 20 years ago, and they were the ones who crafted the document and the language, and they decided what was open to the public and what wasn't. So there are still some things that are held under copyright that you can't use. And they decided all that stuff. I think it was a great move by a company who really wanted to open up the game to more people and have creative people make more things for the game. It helped them spread the game, and it helped creators and sparked economic growth in the tabletop role-playing game industry. The whole intent was to foster creativity and diversity within the gaming industry while still protecting the intellectual property rights of the Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, who own D&D. Independent creators and small businesses and even gaming companies have created a bunch of products created under the original OGL. So this happened over 20 years ago, and later the OGL was updated to include content for 5th edition, which is the current edition of the game, making it possible for individuals and creators to produce their own content that was compatible with the current version of D&D, and this grew exponentially with the internet and being able to sell things online and Kickstarter and all kinds of things. In effect, the OGL played a big part in D&D becoming as popular as it is today. More popular than in any other time in almost 50 years of existence. Some of you may have heard of Critical Role. What you may not know is that when Critical Role first started playing, they were using a system called Pathfinder, not Dungeons & Dragons. And Pathfinder was actually created under the OGL. It was an offshoot of the 3rd edition of the game, really 3.5 rule set, that another publishing company, Paizo, went to go create an entire game system around because most people didn't like the 4th edition version of Dungeons & Dragons. I won't say most people, but a good substantial amount of people were not really happy with the 4th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, and they wanted to keep going with what they knew, and 3.5 was the thing. And later on, like I said, when 5th edition was created, they were able to jump back over on the D&D bandwagon and really grow from there. Now, you may think, if you created a business based on the Open Gaming License, a license put out by some other company, you'd be putting all your eggs into one basket because they could just get rid of the license and you would be in big trouble. Well, not really, because Wizards of the Coast officially said it wasn't going away. Back in 2001, they even posted this official response about the OGL on their website. Question: can Wizards of the Coast change the license in a way that I wouldn't like? Answer: yes, it could. However, the license already defines what will happen to content that has been previously distributed using an earlier version in Section 9. As a result, even if Wizards made a change you disagreed with, you could continue to use an earlier, acceptable version at your option. In other words, there's no reason for Wizards to ever make a change that the community of people using the Open Gaming License would object to, because the community would just ignore the change anyway. So Wizards of the Coast officially stated that the community could always use the previous version of the OGL. Even if they came up with a new revised version, there was no need to worry. You could just use the old version of the license and the stuff that was available in that license. And that made it possible for the industry to expand and for creators to form small businesses publishing content for use with Dungeons and Dragons. It helped make D&D more open and accessible and welcoming, which has been a big part of the boost in popularity in recent years. But now it looks like Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast are trying to go back on what they promised. They're drafting a new license, OGL 1.1. It appears that in that license, they're trying to revoke the previous versions and replace them with one that isn't really open. And again, they said they weren't going to do that. They said you could use the old one, but that's not really happening according to them. If they move forward with this, it will harm a large number of independent creators and small businesses. And I don't just mean that they're trying to keep their intellectual property safe. Remember, the current license, the one they wrote, by the way, already defines what I can use and you can use and anybody can use, and what can't be used by others. There are specific things that you can't use. Copyright, no, don't use it. But this new license would make it virtually impossible for independent creators to retain the rights to their own work. If you use the new license, they have claim to it. It would also call for a bunch of royalties and be just a disaster for anyone who publishes content and makes a living creating products in the industry. I'm not going to get into all the specifics here. I'll leave links to other videos who do a great job explaining all the details, just how bad it is. But just know that any buzz that you hear is likely not an overreaction. It's people being upset because it's going to hurt their livelihood. So what does this mean for me? It means if Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro continue to go down this path, it's sad to say I can't support their business any longer. It doesn't mean I won't be playing or running games or even creating videos about D&D. I've got a long history with the game, and it's a great one. It really is. It just means I won't buy anything new. As Super Geek Mike so eloquently put it on his channel, I will not financially support Wizards of the Coast if they attempt to revoke any previous OGL, #OpenDND. If they keep to this path, it means I won't be buying books or any digital products, or subscribing to D&D Beyond, or using their new digital tabletop, or even purchasing a movie ticket. And if you support small businesses and independent creators, you may want to think twice too. But I really hope that they hear the community outcry and change their course in this. If they fix this issue and they don't go through with this proposed change, I will be back to let you know. I won't sit and, stay silent. I will tell you if they change and fix things. And if they do what's right, I will likely buy tickets to the new movie and keep using their products because, hey, they did the right thing. So, having said all that, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I know it wasn't really a fun one, but it is an important one. So, cheers.